Now, fresh details have emerged of how a wrong patient underwent brain surgery at the Kenyatta National Hospital last month. Appearing before the Health Parliamentary Committee, the family of the patient who was to undergo surgery, John Nderito, revealed that he had not been labelled, and in fact, none of the patients in the men's ward had a tag leading to that mix-up. Chris Sairu tells us more.
The wrong patient was operated.
The Departmental Committee on Health in the National Assembly was treated to harrowing tales on how Samuel Kimani ended up on the operating table instead of John Nderito, who was to undergo a brain surgery to remove a blood clot at the Kenyatta National Hospital. It emerged that no labeling was done on the patients at the casualty, which will be the standard operating procedure. This came up when medics who took part in the operation were grilled by the committee.
Labeling on the gown, then if there's change of clothes, then how would you identify the patient again? Or would you have picked a wrong gown that another patient had just dropped and put on this guy?
As soon as I finished with the patient at around 5:30, my shift ended at 8. As soon as I handed over the patient, I left the patient in the room to go to theater. I don't know which nurse took over.
We hand over patient from one patient to another. But on that material day, we had admitted 10 patients, 2 nurses on duty, and we had other issues, answering customer care, answering patients' questions.
The family of John Nderito, who was to undergo the surgery, revealed how their kin was mistreated despite requiring an urgent surgery.
And in fact, when he was in Kenyatta, because he was neglected for around 2 weeks before the CS came. Actually, he started being given medicine when the CS came. We had to buy medicine from outside to give him. He had a backache. His leg is paining even now.
I'm not fine. I'm not well.
But they don't look for a stretcher for you. You go and look for it. So we were wondering if we had if she had not found one. I don't know how we could have managed him, the two of us.
John Nderito has not been operated as expected, but instead, doctors have put him on medication. The patient, who was erroneously operated, has since been discharged. The family is now planning to sue the hospital over the mix-up. Meanwhile, KNH board, led by its chair, Mark Bor, was ejected less than 10 minutes into the sitting after only 3 board members showed up with an excuse that the rest had a busy schedule.
Maybe you are also too busy then to call out independent inquiry, because we should be discussing 2 reports here. A report that you worked on as a board immediately when this matter occurred, and a report that the minister requested for.
The board has not really rested. We've been having meetings as a full board, and we have even formed a committee of the board.
What we need is the entire board as per our request, and if you can't raise, at least raise a quorum.
The committee is set to finalize their report on Monday before tabling it on Tuesday next week. The mix-up saw the facility's chief executive officer, Lily Koros, sent home on compulsory leave. Meanwhile, MPs from the Rift Valley have shelved a motion seeking to impeach Health CS Cecily Kariuki until the Health Committee finalizes their report. Chris Dairu, KTN News.
All right, and of course, today we're looking forward, and Lily Koros, who is the CEO of the suspended CEO of KNH, is appearing before the Parliamentary Health Committee, together with Dr. Ben Gidai, who's the Director of Services at the KNH. But of course, we also just want to look at some of the cases, really. Remember, like I mentioned, today our focus is on medical negligence here in the country. Shortly, we'll be speaking to Dr. Goody Gore. But before that happens, let's just take a look at the statistics, the numbers since a few years ago. Let's just take a look at those numbers right now. All right, so you're starting there with medical negligence between 1997 to 2018. That's, of course, this year. And the cases that have been lodged before the board is 985. Cases that have so far been determined, 970. So that's a good thing. At least the cases really also just get to the end of it. And then you also have the pending cases, just 15 of them. So those are the numbers really of just where we are at with regard to the cases of medical negligence that have already been reported. All right, so as you can see with the numbers there, almost like a steady increase right from 1997 when the first case was actually reported. And like I mentioned, 985 cases have so far been reported, 970 of them been determined, and then 15 are waiting or pending determination. Let me bring in Dr. Goody Gore. She is the Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Union Central Branch Secretary General. Thank you very much for joining us, Daktari, here on the show. So we will start, of course, from the probes that are currently ongoing against the CEO, Lily Koros, and of course against the doctors and the nurses who were involved in that brain surgery mix-up. As a doctor who fully understands all the issues that are affecting KNH and just generally how healthcare is provided here in the country, what would be your hope? What do you want to see at the end of this whole process, even as we await to see the results?
Thanks a lot for having me, Becky. As a practitioner in a level 5 hospital, I understand some of the issues that a level 6 hospital is going through, as much as I'm not a part of that process. I feel like we have found a scapegoat in the medical practitioners, in the healthcare providers. The medical error that occurred was as a result of systemic failure. There is overcrowding and overflowing of patients to Kenyatta from all facilities, even from referral facilities. Why should we have referral facilities in all these counties if we still have to continue sending patients to Kenyatta, yet we have fantastic consultants in our hospitals? That overcrowding and overflowing, until the overcrowding and overflowing has been stopped, these medical errors unfortunately will continue to happen. The referral systems need to be strengthened. What we need to learn from these Kenyatta incidents is that we cannot gamble with patients' life, and that all stakeholders of health should be involved. The national government, the county government, us as doctors, nurses, clinical officers. We've been saying this for a long, long time. Even from our strike, it was very evident that the health system in Kenya is sick. We have the burden, the disease burden keeps increasing, but we don't have doctors. Currently, we have 1,000 unemployed doctors. Yet, the patients still keep flowing. With NHIF, we still have more patients, and we want to serve Kenyans, but we want to be empowered to serve Kenyans. We want the Kenyans to know that doctors don't voluntarily just neglect their patients. We're in the hospital to prevent these deaths, to prevent these injuries. There is no way I'll enter in a hospital and decide today is the day I decide to injure a patient. So we need to take the limelight away from the doctor, from the scapegoat, and actually pay attention and look at what the systemic failures are. We do not have enough doctors. We are having an increasing patient burden. We're even having diseases that Earlier on in the 80s and 70s, we didn't have like cancer. We have a very high prevalence of cancer. For example, in our level 5 PGH, we admit 30% of cervical cancers from 100% of admissions in obs-gynae. So you can imagine with that disease burden, and we don't have an oncologist. So with this disease burden and doctors that are not trained, what do you expect? I put that question to the Kenyans. If you don't train us,
right,
we are not employed. You don't fight for your doctors to be in the hospitals for you. What can we do?
I hear you, Daktari. Everything that you've said, I hear you quite clearly, and I understand everything that you're saying. Let's talk about one of the issues that you've correctly mentioned, and it's something that we've had even from consultants, even when they had a press briefing about 2 weeks ago, and they were so passionate about talking about the issues that really surround KNH. And one of it was what you mentioned, overcrowding. So who's to blame for this? Is it the leadership, because Kenyans want to understand, so where is the problem? Many of them, of course, leave hospitals along the way, and they drive all the way to KNH, hoping that this is where they will get this medication. But whose job is it really to ensure that there's no overcrowding, like you're mentioning, at the KNH?
Yes, I am a doctor, I'm a medical professional. I have a service to provide, and the country is in need of that service. I am in that hospital, I have presented myself, I'm ready to put in the manual work and the cognitive work. Now, if I'm not empowered to work, it's the employer's fault, the leader's fault, because we've been bringing these issues to their attention over and over and over again. You can see the history of doctor struggle. For the past 20 years, we have been saying this. We need more doctors, we need better facilities, we need better patient care. I think the leaders should take up this opportunity and actually hire more doctors, see why the health is sick.
Interesting. All right, let's just talk about the issue at hand, and it's that probe, with regard to that brain surgery mix-up. And of course, even the family really devastated that even a tag on the hand of, the patients was not there. So who really is to blame for this? Make us understand who really should be held accountable for this, because there has to be somebody. As much as we're saying there are very many issues at the KNH, isn't there somebody who, ensures that, all the patients are properly labeled?
Yeah. Betty, if you look at the health norms, the health staffing norms, they say that 3 nurses should be able to take care of 10 patients. It should be 3 nurses to 10 patients. What is the patient nurse ratio in the ward? If you have 1,500 to 2,000 patients in the ward and you have only 3 nurses, what do you expect? What kind of output do you expect from that department? If they had sufficient nurses, then all the work that was supposed to be done would have been done. If they had sufficient healthcare providers, the work would have been done. I personally think the problem is coming from the leadership. From the leadership, they are not understanding how much we need doctors in this country. We have a deficit of 35,000 doctors in this country. They need to employ more doctors. I urge the leadership of KNH and even this country and all the counties, employ more doctors, employ more health practitioners. It's the only way we can curb these unfortunate medical errors.
All right, let's go back to the numbers, Daktari, to do with, the cases of medical negligence that have been reported. And of course, we have about 985 since 1997, coming down to 2018. And 970 out of this have been determined. Would you tell us, out of these cases that have so far been determined, how many people have been deregistered? How many cases of this really, have been able to retain their licenses and continue working? So that we see that as much as, we have systemic issues to do with the hospitals, that even the medical negligence, if indeed somebody is found culpable, that they indeed, the action is taken against them.
Unfortunately, I'm not privy to that information. I am not sure what the outcome of the cases were, so I can't comment on that.
Let me just bring in some graphics. I understand that we have some graphics to do with a few more numbers, Daktari. Let's just stay with me and I'll mention them to you so that you can be able to hear them. Let's just have the graphics on screen. All right, so we have Okay, so there you go. So, Dr. we have cases of speciality. You have obstetrics and gynecology, about 241 cases, internal medicine, 158 cases, and then surgery cases amounting to 138. So those are the cases per speciality. Of course, you have also 100 of the financial. You have pediatrics, about 88 cases of medical negligence since 1987 to 2018. Orthopedic cases amount to about 87 of them. Let's just continue on to the next graphics. All right. So, Dr. as you've seen, we've seen quite a number of issues according to these numbers, that these issues are really cut across almost every sphere of medicine. Let's leave the systematic failures and issues to do with how the hospitals are handled. Do you agree that indeed in some cases there is a lot of medical negligence in some of the cases that doctors in Kenya handle?
I wouldn't want to say that it's medical negligence, because that means that the caregiver did not give the treatment or the care that the patient deserved. There are medical errors coming from the shortage of the workforce in the healthcare. If I have 2 patients who come in an emergency and I'm tending to one, how am I to choose which life is important to me? The patient who I will not be able to tend to, their relatives will get angry and upset and think that I did not prioritize their patient, yet I was working on the other one. If I lose that patient, it will not be as a result of medical negligence, but medical error as a result of underemployment. And that is the problem that we have. I don't believe it's medical negligence. We are overwhelmed with all the patients that we have.
So this issues to do with the running of these hospitals affect almost all hospitals in the country. Are you saying that indeed there are no cases where doctors have erred in one way or another, that it all boils down to the issues in the hospitals?
Of course, there has to be human error. No one is 100% perfect. I'm sure there has been cases where doctors have erred, but I also know that they have taken responsibility for it. For example, the KNH doctor, once he realized that the epidural hematoma, the clot, once they opened the skull, wasn't there, he informed the ward, he informed the people who are relevant. Had he just closed the skull and, switched out the patient and took him back to the ward and brought in the right patient, no one would have known this. But we know that even us as human beings, we make mistakes. And once we make mistakes, what can we do? We can own up to them. Once you own up to the mistake, you need to find out why did the mistake happen. Fine, a mistake has happened, an unfortunate situation has taken place, but what is the cause? How can we curb this? How can we avoid this from happening again? And all that trickles down to all the systemic failures that we've been talking over and over. Dr. Luga came here, Dr. Kimani has talked about it. Everything trickles down to that. If the systems can be linearized, for lack of a better word, if the systems can be streamlined, then I think these errors and the negligence that people are talking about will reduce significantly.
We have, of course, to also admit that there has been a steady increase. Right from 1997, when you look at the cases of medical negligence, 1997 it was actually just one. But then, as we, proceed on to the years, looking at the numbers, you see that there's an increase, in the number of cases. 2018 alone, we already have 7 cases of medical negligence, and we're not even halfway through the year. So you can imagine if, maybe this continues, we're talking about more and more Kenyans whose lives really are, at risk because of these issues. So for you, during the strike, going back to the strike that, was there last year, about 100 days, do you feel like, some of the issues that you raised, at that time have been changed, that things have changed, that there's progress in some of the things that you were agitating for as doctors at that time?
Unfortunately not. Even as we speak, the CBA harmonizations have not taken place in the counties. We simply cannot get meetings with the health committee. We have talked about the health for so long, and we really feel that it's falling on deaf ears. As you've said, Betty, from 97, the cases of negligence have only been increasing. Those are the indicators, health indicators that show you that your system is failing. Why should negligence cases be increasing over time? Yet we are in 21st century. Kenyatta was built in the 20th century. Now we're in the 21st century. They need to upgrade our hospitals to the 21st century needs.
Right. So finally, Dr. Hari, let's talk about, as a doctor and of course as a leader, with KMPDU, what would be your ideal situation? What do you think should be done? Because we're having all this, the suspension of CEO Lily Koros, and a number of people were saying that that is not the problem. So from where you sit, really, moving forward, what do you think really needs to be done? Is it a matter of funding? Is it a matter of really the government really weighing in and going down into the details, the nitty-gritties of what really ails, not even KNH alone, just other hospitals also around the country?
Yes. I think, first of all, they need to do, they need to come and see the staffing norms. They need to look at the staffing norms. They need to come to this hospital and look at the workload that's there and the employees they need to have. Then they need to have funding, but that's the problem. Everyone in every county is saying they do not have money to employ more doctors, they don't have money to promote us, they don't have money to train us. So funding is a big problem, employment is a big problem. And actually, even if they suspend Lily Koros, there'll be another CEO. If they don't change this system, there'll be another medical error, and they will suspend another Lily Koros. So they can suspend as many CEOs as they want, and they can use as many doctors as they want as scapegoat. But the truth of the matter is the health system is failing terribly, and something needs to be done about it now.
Thank you very much, Dr. Goody Gore. She is the Secretary General of KMPDU, handling the central part of the country. Thank you very much for your time. She's just really highlighting the cases of medical negligence and why we are having quite a steady increase, really, of these cases here in the country. Of course, just going back, she's saying that indeed it has everything to do with the systematic failures, institutional challenges that the doctors really work under. Remember that this conversation is coming with the backdrop of the CEO, the suspended the CEO Lily Koros appearing before the Health Committee today. We're following that for you here on KTN. All right, so we want now to just give you some pictures of what's happening. Remember also that the doctors and the nurses who are involved in that